It's hiring people into the decision-making processes.
Exactly.
They have to be at the table. They have to be, you know, counted on as a part of the decision-making. That's what will have an impact.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Cooking with Creatives. Today, I have my friends Larry and Arlene Dunn. They are what I would call new music's biggest super fans. They are this really wonderful couple who I've known for a couple years now, and I'm really, really fortunate to have them who are so incredibly passionate about our community and have become a really important addition to our community over the last, you know, what has it been? 20, 30 years now that you've really.
Well, actively fans and writing and advocating. It's more like 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we're very fortunate to have them a part of our community, and so I'm so happy that they're here. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. That's a really important part if you want to get the notifications. Um, and that is, I'm so excited to have them. So Larry, Arlene, what are we making today?
We're making Cherry Clafoutis, and this is a recipe based on Herbert Keller's.
Hubert Keller.
Yeah, and um, we're gonna start out with roasting a quarter cup of slivered blanched almonds.
So maybe we should explain a little bit what clafoutis is. And it's an ancient dessert from France. I think the word clafoutis actually is an Occitan word that predates modern French. And it's something like a souffle, something like a custard, and traditionally is made with black cherries, which we're doing today, but it can be made with many other things.
As we mix up the wet ingredients, is there an order that you tend to put these in?
Yeah, I start with the eggs, and because I want to whip the eggs up, I use a whisk. Kind of a nice medium-sized whisk. I like to feed them, reasonably fluffy. I'm not going to get crazy carried away here. A cup of milk. I have a cup of creme fraiche, so I need a cup and a half of milk and creme fraiche. So I just put the creme fraiche in until I get to a cup and a half.
Wonderful. The so Tell me a little bit about the two of you. How I know that you are coming to me from Oberlin. Tell me a little bit about how you got involved with the music scene.
Well, we've always, for all of our adult lives anyway, been very attracted to adventurous music in various forms. In the earliest days, that was psychedelic rock music and that sort of thing, and avant-garde jazz, and we spent, for a long time, probably spending more of our energy in terms of listening and such in jazz than most anything else. We also, neither of us really knew anything about what would generally be called classical music growing up, and was something we, learned about on our own as adults, and got, quite interested in that as well, but had, largely speaking, no idea that anybody was making music like that today. And we got some brief introductions, maybe in the mid-'80s. Philip Glass opera was done at Lyric Opera of Chicago. We stumbled on the Kronos Quartet because one of their albums had a cover of Jimi Hendrix' Purple Haze, who was we were a big fan of Jimi Hendrix, so and we started to learn that there was people doing this, but for even with that, it was very difficult to find opportunities to like go hear it until the beginning of the 2000s. It really started. We were in the Chicago area, and it really started to explode in Chicago. In great measure, I think, because of Eighth Blackbird and International Contemporary Ensemble, who we discovered in the process and started following them. And our relationship with International Contemporary Ensemble in particular is what blossomed into anything that you think of us today as super fans that people would know on the internet or when they see us at a concert. Because Claire Chase asked us to write for the blog, and that started a whole avalanche of things.
So, did you put the brandy in already?
No, so I'm now going to put in the vanilla.
Oh, the vanilla. Okay.
2 teaspoons of vanilla and a tablespoon of the brandy.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about who in the contemporary, I'm going to use the word contemporary pretty loosely here, but who are the people that, maybe are the people you're most excited about, living or not living?
Well, we're quite interested in rediscovering African American and other people of color and other marginalized communities. One that there are a couple that have Oberlin connections and that are important to us, and one is Olly Wilson and the other is Shirley Graham Du Bois. So Olly spent 5 years here from 1965 to 1969. He was the first African American person to be hired in the conservatory. One of the really most important things about Olly to know is that he started the electronic music program here at Oberlin, and along with John Clow, who helped him get the grant to purchase the equipment needed, he offered the very first course in creating electronic music in 1969. So in 2019, which was the 50th anniversary of that, one of the professors in Tamara, which is technology in music and related arts, Tom Lopez, and other people in the Tamara department were doing a lot of programs celebrating this 50th anniversary. And one program was a 5-hour marathon called Kaleidosonic. And Tom asked us if we had any interest in doing something for Kaleidosonic. And so we wrote, I guess you could call it an opera. We wrote a piece with 4 movements that is selected words from Olly's writings, and that might actually do it. Is it? Yeah, actually, we could squeeze a few more in. We really like to fill the pan with cherries as much as possible.
So I can put my cherries in the pan now then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we wrote this 4-part piece. It's called Olly Wilson Remixed. This is another page. yeah, Olly Wilson remixed. And you see that? So this had 4 movements: black music as an art form, musical electrons in Oberlin, and composing while black. And then we asked Kirk Pearson, a person we met while he was a student here in Oberlin, and his major.
Okay.
His major was actually geology, but he that's right. He had 2 degrees, geology and composition, and but he also spent a fair amount of time in the Tamara studio, and he wrote the what do you call that? Soundscape for the piece. So as we were reciting it, I'll show you that too. We were sometimes talking, I don't need to show that. Sometimes one of us was reading, sometimes and alternating, and sometimes the both of us were. And then Kirk wrote this beautiful soundscape for it. So that's how we got involved with Olly Wilson.
No, but of course we're not only interested in people who have died, although we are very concerned about people and their work getting erased. And I think among the living composers, probably our most favorite is George Lewis, who teaches at Columbia University and has a background in Chicago in the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, which was a very important development from the 60s that's still going on today in promoting and creating a space for creative music, composed and performed by African Americans. And it's really from George that we learned that there's all these African American and other people of color composers who have been erased from history and are not getting their due. And of course that problem's not just related to music, it happens in all fields. So we never pass up a chance to hear some of George's new music. We're also, we've recently commissioned a project with the International Contemporary Ensemble for Courtney Bryan, who's a graduate of Oberlin and was a student of George's at Columbia, who is writing an opera called Awakening that's in the midst of its development right now. It once might have been premiered in the fall of 2020, although that was pushed off till next year,
Yeah, it's
even before the pandemic. But now it's not entirely clear. It probably will be in the fall of 2021.
And it goes. Yeah, 400 degrees convection. Spencer doesn't have convection, so we've suggested he use 425, and we're going to set the timer for 25 minutes.
So while our clafoutis is in the oven, I guess I wanted to just learn a little bit more about Olly Wilson and hear what makes Olly Wilson special, and why we should know more about him.
Well, I think one of the things that we were struck by, and in addition to the fact that we were sort of in a very important Olly Wilson place and knew almost nothing about him or his music, and when we started to dig into the music, he really has a wide array of styles and types of music that he created. Of course, these, we're celebrating what he did in electronic music last year, and he did got very involved in that as a young composer. And he won the first ever international prize for electronic compositions in 1967 with his work Cetus, which is a very striking and interesting piece to listen to even today. But he has written for chamber groups, symphonies, a lot of choral music, and music for soloists that is also very exciting. One of the final element of this kind of epic poem that we wrote and performed is a piece by Claude McKay called "If We Must Die," which is a very defiant kind of poem written in the Harlem Renaissance. And Olly set that to music in a song cycle of his called "Of Visions and Truth," I think it's called. And that's an easy recording to find, and is really, that whole song cycle is really moving and beautiful.
And some of that he's adapted from traditional spirituals as well. So there's one called "Sometimes," which is a takeoff on "Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child."
Right, that's another piece.
Right.
Just separate piece, yeah.
Yeah, separate piece, but on that related song.
But that's also one of the things that I think he's really important for, is claiming the importance of African American musical tradition as a source for contemporary composition. And just as we see all over the world, that people use the music of the people to turn into their art form, and mine their own culture. And this was, at the time that Olly started working, was seen as material that had no business in the conservatory or the academy or on the concert stage. And so he was a real pioneer in making that happen, although it's not exclusively what his music is or was about, but in many of his pieces used elements of that. And the other thing we learned we didn't know anything about when we started out to do this was the wealth of material that he created as a scholar in writing in scholarly journals. And again, about many topics, although I think the most important work that he did was early scholarship on the nature of African and African American music, how it has its own identity in the global world of music, and is different from other things, and exploring what those differences are. One of the pieces is, what is the one that is the...
Composing While Black?
No, the very first piece.
Okay.
Can't think of the name right now, but it was a fundamental paper in this arena. And so I think that, like many of his peers, black music is an art form. He, was not just producing great art, but a really deep and important thinker about art and music and culture and politics. And he was also, he came to Oberlin in the midst of the civil rights movement, and I think Oberlin changed because he was here. He delivered a phenomenal speech that we also pulled some information from for our work, called "How Long, Not Long," on the eve of his leaving Oberlin and heading to Berkeley. That was a very fiery speech to kind of send him on his way, and is something that Tom Lopez found in the Oberlin archives. His original, it was a scan of his original manuscript with his notes, handwritten notes, cross-outs, changing words. This is the script that he stood in Finney Chapel and delivered the piece from, which is, even as a facsimile, is just a very
It's powerful.
rich and powerful thing to put your hand on.
You know, something else that he wrote about was about when he was talking about music from the African diaspora. He wrote quite a bit about blending that with the Western tradition, because he recognized that he came from, studying the Western tradition and could not deny that that was a part of his musical training, but when he was discovering black music, and he did discover it. It was something basically in the 60s when he recognized that it was because of the civil rights movement that he recognized, well, there's got to be some African American music traditions that I need to pull from, and he started investigating that. And there's a couple of lines in there about how he had to do this on his own.
Well, this is particularly true, though, I think, of African music, not African American music. But when he was at Oberlin, he got some grants. He had never studied anything about African music, knew nothing about it. And Olatunji, I think he was from South Africa. I should remember this, and I don't. But he was very active in the New York jazz scene as a percussionist, and he started a school in African music in New York. And Olly went to that school using grants that he got. I think it was probably something he did in the summers, and began to understand the roots of African American music and how it changed as it moved and morphed here in the time of enslavement, and then into the culture, the greater culture beyond. And of course, that music was influencing more popular music styles from the very beginning, but it was sealed off from the conservatory and the concert stage as inappropriate material for investigation. And so that's something that he spent a lot of time both intellectually in his research and writings, and of course in his creation of work.
I think that it's really important to talk about what is appropriate when we talk about classical music. Can you talk about how institutions have played a role in stifling the what gets performed in various concerts and whatnot?
Yeah, well, I think thinking back to like a composer like Olly Wilson or any composer, I think the first way that the institution crushes your ideas is, to tell you, well, nobody's going to want to hear that. It's not like you're not allowed to do it, but if nobody's going to want to hear it, then why would you waste your time writing something on a theme of your own culture when nobody cares? That's never going to be programmed at the Chicago Symphony or the Cleveland Orchestra. And I think if we observe the behavior of those institutions, they certainly send out those signals that they don't want you to bring them ideas to program that get outside the lane. And the conservatories, the schools of music, they, especially over the longer run, maybe breaking up a little bit now, but they're looking to the orchestras and the opera companies and what they program and giving what they may feel like is good advice to the young composers. Well, do this, don't do that. Nobody wants to hear that crap. you got to do something like this, or it won't get programmed, or if it does get programmed, it'll get played once and never heard again, and some people will get up and walk out because they won't understand it.
So, as a result, the conservatories then are teaching the performers as well as the composers. So performers are not exposed to other kinds of music and learning how to perform those other kinds of music because of this same notion that it just won't fly in the standard classical music world.
Those aren't skills you will need in the real world.
Right.
That looks really great.
Nice brown edges. I touch this is nice and firm, so we know that the batter is fully cooked, and we want to let it cool.
And it smells terrific.
And the last step, we have to wait like about 10 or 15 minutes to let it cool enough to to sprinkle some powdered sugar on. Oh, that looks fabulous.
I'm glad that I let it sit for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things you might notice that I think ours has more cherries. We really stuff the cherries in there. Don't leave any part of the
Well, but essentially just fill the bottom, right?
yeah, fill the bottom, but push, Anyway.
I've been really enjoying this conversation that we've been having today. I'm wondering what you think is some of the better things that institutions can do to tackle issues of systemic racism that run rampant within our community and their organization.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that this isn't just in this music community, but it is throughout our society and culture. It's our history, and I think one of the important things to do, in addition to trying to be more inclusive and working towards bringing in more people of color and other marginalized communities, for organizations to look inward and to reflect on their own personal as well as organizational elements that are that basically are exclusive. That it hasn't been a welcoming because it doesn't even occur to people how to do that. And I want to just say one other thing, that it's important to, people want to hire a person of color, say, or they want to commission a composer who's African American. It's very important to avoid tokenism, where you're just putting a person, I've seen so many marketing things just where they sort of plop in a person of color, so that means we're okay,
Yeah,
we've just
well done.
We've taken care of racism, we've brought in people into the organization.
But I think the hiring is really an essential piece of this, and it's hiring people into, in organizations like New Music Presenters, etc. It's hiring people into the decision-making processes.
Exactly.
They have to be at the table. They have to be counted on as a part of the decision-making. That's what will have an impact. If you're looking at schools and conservatories and colleges, they need to be hiring more black faculty, and not just black faculty in African American studies or Africana studies. They need to be everywhere in the institution, and centering black experience and black culture It's so fundamental and important to our entire culture, and yet we keep marginalizing it. And the only way out is to, open your arms and bring people in and put them in important and decision-making positions.
One other thing is that if, say, you were presenting music and you're wanting to welcome African Americans into your concert hall, think about going to their community, bringing your music to the African American community or the Latinx community and listening to them. Always be very thoughtful listening and not trying to just bring your stuff to them.
And this field, which is so much about listening, isn't always listening to the right things.
I really agree with all of this. I think listening is really important. I think also knowing that serving a community is very different when we think about cultural exchange versus like cultural outreach and community exchange versus community outreach. Community outreach benefits the orchestra. Community exchange benefits everybody involved. If we're going to include the works by Black America, we need to make sure that the benefit is for Black America, just as much as it is for us.
Just some check box.
It has to be for everybody. It can't just be, oh, I want to do this just because it's trendy. Oh, I want to do this because otherwise I'm going to get labeled as a racist. Because at the end of the day, you're not serving them, you're serving yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really important thing to add to that.
In the spirit of today's show and your whole series, people need to get together and eat each other's food.
And it just
Not too heavy.
not too heavy.
Thank you so much for this.
Delicious.
This is so wonderful. I didn't eat it this warm the first time.
Yeah.
I made it as a dessert for a barbecue that we were having. So it was, this is really wonderful. Thank you for sharing this recipe with me.
Oh, thank you for having us on the show.
Yeah. So my last thing that I would like to ask is, where can people find out more about Arlene and Larry and all the writing that you do and whatnot?
Well, we've just redesigned and relaunched our blog, which is now at acornometrics.com. Acorn, OMETRICS. And there's, we're pulling over material from our former blog, and I'll probably repost some of our favorite things from I Care If You Listen and the International Contemporary Ensemble blog. Well, that's the best place to find out about us. We're Acorn Arlene LD on Twitter. And on Facebook, you can find us at Larry Arlene Dunn. Any of those places you can follow along. If you send us a friend request, we'll be happy to oblige. You also talked a little bit about Olly Wilson and where to find more about Olly Wilson. There's not any good just one place. There is at University of California, Berkeley has a oral history project that he did many hours of interviews over several days, and the transcript and some excerpts of that are up on the UC Berkeley site at the UC Berkeley Library. I can't think of the Bancroft Library, something like that. Also, recently was posted on YouTube, the first time I'd seen it, is Olly Wilson Symphony No. 3 called Hold On, which was premiered in 1998 or 99 by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. It is really an exciting and amazing piece with William Eddins conducting. And I think I'm not sure exactly what you post where, but we can send you the link for that. And we're encouraging the orchestra here at Oberlin Conservatory to program it as soon as they can. I think we ought to encourage all symphony orchestras to be playing this piece. When you hear it, you will find it hard to imagine that we don't hear it all the time. It is so exciting.
Wonderful. Yeah, all of these links for all of these resources and all of their websites and all of that will be in the description below of this video. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I'm so thankful. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, which is really important if you want to actually get notified. These videos come out every Tuesday at 10 a.m. And I am so, again, thankful. So thank you again.
Well, thanks for
Thank you.
having us.
Okay. Have a great day.
All right.
Bye-bye.